The National Association of Investment Companies, NAIC, was formed to serve as the industry association for diverse-owned and emerging managers. Members came from the Asian, Hasidic Jewish, Orthodox Jewish, African American, and Latino communities, and were all encouraged to explore new business opportunities together.
In the early years, if you think about the NAIC's origins, it was formed initially as the American Association of Minority Enterprise Small Business Investment Companies. And the membership was made up of firms who managed capital primarily provided by the U.S. Small Business Administration. So they were managing government money.
The NAIC got started because there was a real need to have a trade association that was just focused on getting greater access to capital for diverse fund managers.
There was a common sort of mission or goal that is to invest in Black, Latino, Asian, and other entrepreneurs and create business opportunities and wealth in those communities.
During the early years, leadership headed by Pat Jacobs and Joanne Price focused on advocacy and support for its members.
It was critical that we were able to build a trade association in Washington, D.C. that had a voice that was able to communicate not just in the Washington context, but across the country.
They were working with Congress to increase capital allocation for the industry. Network and support was exceptional.
It was during this period, 1972 to 1979, that legendary businessman Reginald F Lewis served as general counsel to the organization. As his law firm specialized in venture capital transactions for small and medium-sized businesses, he helped a large number of member firms acquire funding while also gaining the critical experience in structuring deals. Years later, he would go on to become the first African American to build a billion-dollar company, Beatrice Foods.
That was a signature event. It showed that when you level the playing field, all different kinds of participants can come in and can excel. That deal in of itself made him the wealthiest African American in the country overnight, and it was an inspiration to many, many people.
What it really demonstrated and illustrated was that someone out of the mainstream could successfully do something that was so monumental.
Over the last 45 years, the single event that has had the biggest impact, I believe, is the creation of Fairview Capital. Fairview Capital was the brainchild of members of the NAIC Board of Directors. Our president at the time, Joanne Price, had to go run Fairview.
It was suggested by the industry executives that we promote the formation of a fund of funds. That ultimately became Fairview Capital.
It really did serve to shift the arc of ascent of the industry with respect to its access to the broader capital markets, served an educative function for institutional investors about this space, and eventually spawned competitors and other entrants into the marketplace that has served the industry extremely well.
2.5 years later, we had our first closing at $100 million.
In the 1980s, the association also dedicated its focus toward legislative issues, actively testifying on regulatory matters, particularly those related to the Federal Communications Commission. By the early 2000s, the NAIC was largely focused on growing its membership base and developing relationships with talented managers.
The emerging manager programs, those, in my opinion, have made a big difference in the industry. The number of programs and the number of participants have helped a lot of minorities and women in this business get in the business.
As a diverse manager, in our early days, it was all about raising money, making great investments, and generating outsized returns. And that's still, without question, our number one focus. But as we've matured, it's also become very important that we continue to support the broader cause.
What I believe about this industry is that it is welcoming to anyone who can add value, regardless of what they look like, regardless of their background, regardless of how they came to the industry.
As the 21st century plods on, the NAIC looks to expand the marketplace's knowledge of the organization, what it does, and strengthening its value proposition.
What the NAIC has done over the last 45 years and is doing ain't easy. We are moving this big pebble uphill. Changing people's behaviors and biases are the hardest thing to do. This is a movement. This isn't really a trade association.
Our vision for the NAIC going forward is to have an industry that's vibrant, full of new members, full of members that are executing well on their strategy, and ultimately becoming household names in business and financial circles.
The need is as great as it ever was, or if not greater, for there to be an advocate for capital flows into funds that would be sensitive towards the needs of underserved entrepreneurs.
The way I see the industry changing in the future is continued increases in diversity and access to capital for minority and women-owned firms, and NAIC is playing a prominent role in that space.
The NAIC is going to continue to play a leading advocacy role. They're shaping the dialogue even at the highest levels. At the White House, there's an initiative to make sure that when federal pools of capital are allocated, we have equal access to capital.
We are going to include diversity as part of our due diligence on all managers, sets the stage. It lets everyone know that it is important. This is a game-changing moment, not only for the city or the state, but across the nation.
The National Association of Investment Companies will continue to focus largely on access to capital for its members, while also producing compelling research to educate the general market on the value within the emerging domestic market and the talent and returns delivered by its member firms.
I am NAIC.
I am NAIC.
We are NAIC.